I wanted to focus on the smaller mom or pop operations, because what I've found in not only having family but friends in small business is that they look at these big brands and they look at what they're doing from a marketing perspective, and they think that they'll never be able to do that. They don't have the knowledge, they don't have the skill set, they don't have the money, they don't know what tools to use. It looks complicated. So, what I started to do was have conversations with these business owners. And
welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Jay Latendre. He's the founder and CEO at Touchless-Digital. Jay, welcome to the show.
Hey, nice to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. So Jay, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am originally from New England, born and raised in New Hampshire, and graduated from Keene State College. Once I graduated college, I took on a role traveling the country doing marketing and promotion for the health fitness industry, which really kind of was my first taste in back then what we called guerrilla marketing. Right now it's kind of considered direct response marketing, so they've kind of given it a better name. But really, it kind of gave me a taste of setting up campaigns and really kind of piqued my interest in marketing. So after I traveled the country for about a year, I ended up planting myself down here in Florida. I've been in Florida, the Sarasota, Tampa Bay area for, geez, it must be like 20 something plus years now. And then in that time, just really kind of assumed the roles of various marketing positions, both director level and C-level. And then also kind of dip my toes a little bit in operations. So really, I have a unique mix of marketing and operations for both SMB and larger brands. So that's really kind of how I've navigated myself into the whole marketing world.
That's fantastic. That sounds like you've had an interesting journey kind of bringing you to Touchless-Digital. Now, tell me a little bit more about Touchless-Digital.
Yeah, so Touchless-Digital was actually born out of the pandemic. I was leading a marketing team at an established brand, and obviously when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of downsizing. So I ended up separating from that company. No hard feelings. Took a couple weeks to try to figure out what my next steps were going to be, just like I'm sure millions of other people were doing. And ironically, went out to breakfast one morning at a local breakfast spot here. I was seated at the table and looked down and saw that there was a QR code in the middle of the table. Took my phone out, scanned it as most people would do, just out of curiosity, and noticed that it was linked to the restaurant's menu. And then, kind of kept that in the back of my mind for a little bit. As the weeks went on, that's when you started to see a lot more of this touchless option, specifically in the restaurant space, really kind of heating up. And then, I kind of thought back to that breakfast I had and thought, you know what, that's a great concept. QR codes have been around for a long time. And, since Apple and Google natively have put QR codes into their hardware, it's a lot easier for normal consumers to utilize that technology. So what I started thinking about was, well, you know what, QR codes are great, but they're not the prettiest and they're not the most attractive, and they don't really, draw you to scan it. So I started kind of noodling around a little bit and thought, you know what, I bet you I can do that better. So I started to really kind of build Touchless-Digital around the concept of and the mantra that QR codes don't have to be ugly and boring. So fast forward to kind of where we are today. I have built out a platform that, not only just connects, your QR code to a menu. There's all analytics, there's dashboards, there's all of these things. You can not only just utilize a QR code, but you can really kind of get value and marketing analytics from it. So, we've kind of expanded from there, and really kind of the last couple of years have noticed that, again, Google has come out with Chrome, the availability for any user to create a QR code and kind of, get a fast link to that web page. But, again, we've taken that concept like we did with the QR code stickers, or the actual QR codes, in designing them better. We have actually, decided that, a good value is going to be in where that QR code lands that scanner. So anyways, we've kind of focused more on these mobile landing pages that kind of give a better consumer experience. So that's really, what the core value that Touchless-Digital has is it's not just a QR code that links you to a website. There's a lot more analytics involved. And there's a lot more customization because, again, going back to my original thought on QR codes is that, they don't have to be ugly. They can blend right into your brand. They can blend right into your marketing and really kind of, get people's eyeballs.
Yeah, so fascinating. So tell me a little bit more about Touchless-Digital, and the operations.
Sure. So really our core focus is on the SMB side. Growing up in a house where, my father was a small business owner, and coming from larger brands, I wanted to focus on the smaller mom or pop operations because what I've found in not only having family but friends in small business is that they look at these big brands and they look at what they're doing from a marketing perspective, and they think that they'll never be able to do that. They don't have the knowledge, they don't have the skill set, they don't have the money, they don't know what tools to use. It looks complicated. So, what I started to do was have conversations with these business owners and really kind of tell them that, the marketing technology, and the marketing, the marketing campaigns and all of the things that these big brands use are not just for them. They're not secret. There's no secret sauce there. I'll give you a good example. Websites. People look at websites and they think that they're overly complicated to build. They don't want to touch that. But when you start to explain to them that there are great tools out there like Wix and Squarespace, and if you want to go a little bit, a little bit higher, you look at WordPress. They're not overly complicated. I think people just, from a business owner perspective, they look at that and go, well, I'll never be able to do that. So, one of the things that we do at Touchless-Digital is explain to business owners and work with them to let them know that, you can do all of these things that the larger brands do and that your competitors do, and they're not as difficult as you think. And that's really what I think kind of, is an eye opener for a lot of these businesses when you tell them, hey, listen, you can use a tool like MailChimp, and if you have under 500 contacts, it's free. So you can utilize some of the best marketing technology out there with a free 99, marketing budget. And that's one thing that, we like to kind of, talk about with these business owners that we work with is that, you don't have to have $1 million budget. You don't have to have a whole team behind it. A lot of these tools are out there. You just have to kind of take a step back and really kind of think about, well, what is your objective, and then work backwards and then kind of build your tool set to help you achieve what those goals and milestones are.
I think that's fantastic. And I want to circle back to something that you mentioned earlier, Jay, about analytics. Do you support kind of tracking the analytics of how often the QR code is used, locations, things like that?
I am a firm believer in tracking and managing data. And that's another conversation that I always have with business owners is that, you can't get to where you want to be if you don't have a baseline, you don't have a starting point, and you don't have easy to achieve and measurable goals and milestones along the way. So you start with a benchmark and say, here's where we are today. And then you write down, here's where we want to be tomorrow. And then you work backwards and you have obtainable goals. And what I mean by obtainable goals are small incremental goals that you know deep down inside you can achieve. And what that does is it keeps your motivation going, right? If you set out to say, I want to get 500 new leads this month, and you've never done any lead gen, you've never done any lead campaigns, right? And you don't have any data or analytics on where you are today, do you really think, as optimistic as you can be, that you're going to be able to achieve that in 1 month? Probably not. So what'll happen is you'll end up getting discouraged, you'll end up getting upset, you'll end up doubting your own capabilities, and then next thing you know, the whole entire thing kind of falls apart. So what I always like to do is really kind of show people, even in our own software, that you can track scans, you can track where they scan, you can track what media they scan that QR code on. So, when you go and you look at our dashboard, you're able to easily see all those analytics. And then from those analytics, you're able to make really kind of knowledgeable and educated and factual business decisions on where you want to go next based on that. So I'm a firm believer in, if you can track it, you can trend it, and if you can trend it, you can manage it. But you have to have a baseline. And if you don't know where you are today, you really can't have a clear way to get where you want to be tomorrow. So I'm a firm believer in daily management reports. I'm a firm believer, in always taking a look at historical information, and then more importantly, dissecting the data to see if there's anything that jumps out at you that you can then exploit, right? So firm believer in making sure that you have a good tracking system of all of your marketing efforts.
I'm curious to pick your brain a little bit. With your experience, how are you able to leverage your marketing to attract kind of that younger Gen Z, like fast scrolling fingers kind of population?
Well, so I have a 13-year-old daughter who, like every 13-year-old daughter, is going on 26 and tends to understand and know everything. But the one thing that I have noticed amongst her and her peers is that they don't have patience for anything. If something doesn't work seamlessly, if it doesn't work immediately, they don't want it. They don't want it. They don't want to deal with it. They'll move on to the next thing. So that's why when you look at all these social media platforms, right, the ones that seem to be doing the best, from the Snapchats to the TikToks, I mean, they're all things that are like micro minutes, right? So what we like to do is make sure that those QR codes, when someone scans them, it goes directly to where that scanner thinks it's going to be. So like someone, in their early 20s or someone in their teens, if they scan a QR code and it just takes you to a normal website and they have to scroll around and the UI isn't good and the user experience is awful, the first thing they're going to do is X out of it, and then you've lost their eyeballs. So what we like to do, again, going back to these mobile pages, is scan the QR code, brings you to a mobile optimized landing page that has really clear call to action buttons that basically say, okay, read our blog, buy our product, call us, schedule an appointment, go to our social media accounts. And those are like one and done clicks where someone doesn't have to search around for any of that stuff on a website. So, really what we're looking to do is kind of exploit the fact that, they have a low attention span, and more importantly, their expectations versus someone in my generation, right? Where, I mean, I grew up without the internet. And then when it did come along, you were just amazed that you could log on to America Online and talk to someone in Kansas, right? And even though when you logged on to America Online, sometimes it took 35, 40 minutes to log on, and then you had to find a new call center, you were just happy that you had that availability, right? Now they expect it to work and they expect it to be fast. So, we always keep that in the back of our minds when we're kind of designing the latest and the greatest feature set for the platform.
I think that's fantastic. Really appreciate that insight as well. And, Jay, when we're talking about your clients, I know you mentioned you came up with the idea, in a cafe.
Mm-hmm.
You tend to see the clients that you work with most in the restaurant industry? Are they, vary across different industries?
So I think they vary across different industries. What we like to do is really kind of take a look at, well, what is the use case and what's the ROI going to be for that business? And then more importantly, what are the applications of that QR code in either existing or new media campaigns or media print advertising that they want to do? And some businesses may benefit from our services and some may not, and we're very clear about that. I think what we see is obviously restaurants and bars, home services, believe it or not. And by home services, pool cleaning, car detailing. Another good one is going to be we have some hotels and inns that use it. Basically, any small business that interacts with the consumer on a regular basis, where that consumer or their customer has to access some kind of digital property that business has. But what we're finding again is it's going to be restaurants and bars, home service companies, hotels and inns we have. Yeah.
Interesting. And I'm curious, kind of talking about use cases in my head, I'm going through, I'm like, oh wow, I can see them doing like, the menus, for the car washes, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, what are some creative ways that people have been able to use QR codes?
So one of the ways that we've worked with the restaurant is the restaurant that we're working or that we have as a customer. They have a set menu, but really kind of their claim to fame is that every week they have a subset menu that's only available that week. So what we did is we worked with them and we created these magnets that their customers could take home, right? And what they could do is they could, obviously put the magnet up. And if you think about it, if you're, at home on a Friday night, I'll give you an example. My wife and I love to go out, but 80% of the time we don't end up going out because we can't decide where we want to go or what we want to do, and it takes forever, right? So what we did with this restaurant is we said, well, what if there was a way that someone could go to the refrigerator, scan the magnet, and then see, okay, this is what it is this week. Like this is what we're serving this week. And then the value add to that is that the consumer doesn't have to call the restaurant, doesn't have to go on Yelp, doesn't have to arrive at the restaurant to try to figure out and be surprised what it is, right? And then the value to the business was that, they can create one QR code that can be changed dynamically, and that their chef or their manager, every week can then go into our platform, swap out, the PDF or swap out the list of what they're serving, and they don't have to create new magnets to distribute or to sell or whatever it is that they're doing. So, we've done that concept with magnets. We also have done it with takeout stickers. So, we can put QR codes on a takeout sticker. So when they put it on the bag, when someone comes home, they can scan that. So there's a variety of different ways that, we're helping some of these businesses, come up with some creative ways that, really benefit the consumer.
I love that idea of the magnet. That's brilliant marketing. That's so smart because, if I see something on my fridge of one of my favorite restaurants, I'm like, oh, wow, I actually really could go for that. That sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fantastic. So, Jay, I'm curious to pick your brain. Where do you think kind of the QR code, the touchless digital industry is headed in the next 10 years?
Well, I think for me, it's going to be really focus more so on what the bigger players are doing, and by bigger I mean what Google and Apple and even Microsoft are doing in the space. And obviously, what we saw is that Apple is heavily vested in wearable technology, whether it be AR or VR. And the great thing about QR codes is that instant connection between the physical and digital. So where I envision it going is that QR codes are going to be a lot more commonplace as those AR devices start to be more commonplace as well. So if you could imagine you're wearing your Apple smart glasses, you're walking down the street, and just by looking at something, if that something, that object, that business, that front door, that car, anything has a QR code, it's going to instantly be recognized by that AR device and then bring that information directly in front. So it can be, sales and marketing, it could be product information, it could be government warnings, it could be anything. But just being able to look at something and have that website or have that digital property come up, I think is going to be a lot more predominant in the future. Because let's face it, nobody likes to type in a URL. Nobody can remember a handle. Nobody knows, where you are on DoorDash or any of these other marketplaces. So by giving them that direct connection to your brand, by utilizing either AR or some of the other technologies that are coming out, that's where I think it's going. And you can even see that. I know that Apple and Google have both come out in the last couple months that they're doubling down on embedding more QR code technology into their handhelds, into their hardware. So it's not going anywhere.
I think that's really interesting too. And I think you're spot on with, all the creative ways that people can, leverage QR codes in the future. I think that, I really like the wearable technology example. That's great. Well, Jay, as we start to wrap up this interview, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, either about Touchless-Digital, about the industry, anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is to do your homework. Again, going back to that, there are a lot of great tools out there, and there are a lot of businesses that know that they have to have something to help them achieve a goal or to achieve a business objective. I think that it's setting those clear. Okay, if we are going to purchase this tool, A, do we know how to use it? B, what are the goals? What are we looking for an ROI on that, right? Even with free tools. I mean, free is great, but it takes your time, and time is money. So even if it's free, you still need to have those the benchmarks, milestones, goals, and then more importantly, always track and measure what that ROI is. So that's really the only advice that I would have is ask questions if you're dealing with a vendor. Ask questions if you have a marketing company that you're working with. And again, more importantly, track the data, look at the data, know it. And then look for all of those trends that you see in it, so you can achieve, greater profitability.
Well, Jay, I think that's a really great insight. I appreciate, all of the direction you've gave, the great examples, the use cases. I think this was a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate you being on Business Ninjas today.
Great. I appreciate it as well.